Hey, welcome to Stone Cold Stros. Now, full disclosure, we had part 2 of our podcast conversation edited, ready to roll out today. Tiny peek behind the curtain. We try to keep the B block of our podcast a little bit more evergreen because we know we're going to be releasing it the following day. So we talked big picture, what kind of reinforcements are on the way for Houston that could help with their depth, which was certainly relevant coming out of the Yankee series. Then Ronel Blanco throws a no-hitter against the Jays. So that definitely adds context. So Josh and I want to jump on here because we thought there were some important context that we probably need to talk about that I think our conversation with Charlie definitely still stands. I think all of those things are still, I think you're going to hear that conversation following this. I think all those points are still valid, but we would be remiss if we didn't bring up the performance in game 1 of the Jays series, Josh. So let's talk about how critical this was. Following that Yankee series, a lot of bullpen used, then Blanco gives the bullpen the entire day off on Monday.
It was incredible. It was a day where you needed to have a win first and foremost. You're already 0-4. Josh Hader, Brian Abreu were not available because they'd already pitched so much. So you're hoping maybe Presley can get it done if we get in a tight game. And then Ronel Blanco just goes out there and he basically did what he did in the Dominican Winter League. He just went out there and pitched over and over and over again and didn't give up any runs. We talked about that on the channel last year about Blanco. We did some videos about him and how he didn't give up any runs. I think he was the closer for that team a couple different seasons, and he was just magnificent. We saw some of that against the Blue Jays, but I think the addition of that changeup for him, they talked about it during the broadcast. He threw it more than any of his other pitches. It was nasty. He could throw it for strikes. He could fade it out of the zone when he wanted to. The slider was on point as well. And then the fastball, he did what he needed. He showed him enough fastball so that they were off balance for the changeup and the slider. And I thought Yainer Diaz did a great job calling the game. They asked him in the last inning in the postgame conversation there, like, how often were you shaking him off? And Blanco's like, I think I shook him off maybe a couple times in the last inning, but that was about it. For the most part, I was going with what he was calling. So I just thought it was great to see that chemistry between Yainer and Blanco, and to see that, it doesn't have to be Maldonado to catch no-hitters for the Houston Astros. This is something that the Astros are really good at. A couple notes: earliest date for a no-hitter in MLB history. To be fair, we're starting baseball a little earlier now, right? We're starting in March, and this game was on April 1st. So the season's starting a little earlier, but, Astros are no strangers to it. I said it. It's 17th no-hitter in franchise history. Diaz, the first catcher to catch a no-hitter and hit multiple home runs. So, all the credit to Blanco. He was amazing. We know the story about his daughter being born and, making the rotation. Probably wouldn't have made it if it weren't for injury. So, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. And we talked about it in the other video, how when the Verlanders come back and the Urquidis come back, you're going to have some better options in your bullpen coming out of the rotation. So awesome game. And I'd be remiss. How about the offense? 10-0. Yeah. They just come out and pound him. And we were talking about before, we started shooting, would they let Blanco stay in the game if this was a 2-1 game or something like that? Would they let him go over 100 pitches like that? Because it was a must-win game for the Astros. You can't go down 0-5. So I think that was great that the offense took the pressure off. Tucker goes off for a couple bombs, Yainer a couple bombs, and hallelujah, Jeremy Pena puts one over the wall. It wasn't a cheapie. Awesome game for the Astros. I think that's what's great about this organization. If it's not going well, they will come out and just wow you. It's something they do. I just think of that Phillies game when Javier comes out and throws the no-hitter against them. When you go to Philly and you're down, the Astros have a way of bouncing back in a meaningful manner.
They do, and it's a quirky nature. Or the quirky nature of no-hitters, because you talked about, the earliest no-hitter thrown for the Astros in the season, the other being Ken Forsch in 79. Those are, like, you look through the list of no-hitters, those 17 no-hitters, a lot of these names make sense, right? Mike Scott, Nolan Ryan, Darryl Kyle, Roy Oswalt, now Justin Verlander, Christian Javier, Framber Valdez, but they're quirky in the ways that here's Mike Fiers on the list. You don't expect that from Mike Fiers. Aaron Sanchez, you don't expect that from Aaron Sanchez. Although, again, Aaron's and Christian's were combined no-hitters. But again, to your point, if the offense doesn't give you what they give you, then perhaps it's less likely that you see Ronel Blanco be able to finish it. But Blanco's pitch count played into it as well, because he finished it with 105 pitches. So even giving that walk up, that was when he gave the walk to George, you thought like, oh boy, he's above 100 pitches. Like now you're walking a tightrope here. But he was able to finish it off with that grounder to Vlad Jr. So you're in a place to where his count was manageable enough for them to be able to finish it out. But yeah, it is quirky. Ronel Blanco, he may go down as one of the more quirky ones. We'll see what his career holds. Again, like Mike Fiers, that was not a prelude to what was coming in his career. It just was kind of an outlier. Framber Valdez had one last year in which we know how his year ended up. So these things are wild. Like you don't really know how they're going to play out. But when we're talking about reinforcements, we talked about on this conversation that's coming up with Charlie, we talked about the need for your starting pitching to go deep. That's what you saw from Blanco. But also a big point of this as well is you have to support your arms with offense. Really important to see what you're getting from Yainer and Jeremy Pena early, because those guys are shining. Again, only 18 at-bats to this point, but what you're seeing is very encouraging, especially with your guy, Jeremy Pena.
It is. It's so great to see that with Jeremy, because when you're watching him, you can see the adjustments he's making. Yeah, every now and then he'll still, chase a slider way out of the zone. Every pitcher or every hitter, that can happen too. These guys in the major leagues throw nasty stuff, but you're seeing Pena not continue to make that mistake over and over again. If he chases one and then they go to it again, now he's starting to, I'm going to let that one go. I'm going to make him come to me here. And then, the home run he had, it was a hanging slider, a pitch that I don't think he would have hit out last year. We all know he hadn't hit a home run since July 5th. He was just caught in between, and now it looks like he's more comfortable. He crushed a mistake, and he also had another big hit up the middle that really put the game out of hand for the Astros. And, Chaz had a couple hits. Jake Myers had a couple hits. So in a game where you didn't get really anything out of Jordan or Alex Bregman, your 2 and 4 hitters, you still put 10 runs on the board. So I'm really excited what I'm seeing there too. And you mentioned reinforcements. To me, it's not always just a player. It can be something you add to your game, like a changeup. Look how much more effective Blanco is when he has that changeup, to where he's not just a 50-50 pitcher. Either it's a fastball or a slider. And then we're seeing that with Christian Javier. The changeup was a nice addition to his repertoire, to where he looked really dominant in his outing. We're seeing Framber work in the changeup too. I noticed with his, though, it's about like 91 miles an hour. So that's going to be, and he's having trouble controlling everything right now. We'll see how he looks in his next start. But clearly there was a focus on, we want our guys throwing changeups, and they really are great pitches. I mean, think of, the Braves, that great rotation with John Smoltz and Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux. Man, they made their living off of changeups. I mean, they're great pitches. They don't blow out your elbow as much as, power curveballs and sliders. So if you can throw a great changeup, it can make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. We're seeing the resurgence of Christian Javier and now Ronel Blanco, both tied to their additions of changeups. So cap tip to the coaching staff for successfully implementing those pitches and these guys' arsenals. Again, Yainer hitting over, again, only 18 at-bats each, but Yainer hitting over 400, Pena hitting over 400 with a 1,200 and 1,100 OPS, respectively, between Yainer and Pena. Even Jake Myers, he's only hitting 250 but for his average, but is hitting above 800 for his OPS right now. So you'll take that from Jake Myers. Like for a number 9 hitter, you will definitely take that. So, and hey, as far as chasing sliders, as you're talking about Jeremy Pena chasing sliders low and away, Biggio chased sliders all the way to the Hall of Fame. So I don't think we're going to expect anything more from Jeremy Pena than the great Craig Biggio. So let's get to our conversation with Charlie. But we definitely just wanted to add this in because I think that was some important context. So here's that conversation. But let's talk about some positives here. We've touched on this channel The Astros are experiencing an acute case of talent attrition combined with health attrition right now. That seems to be this perfect storm that's led them to this 0-4 start. On the pitching front, JB is obviously a big variable. With Verlander and some of these other reinforcements, what are you looking forward most to seeing that can help bolster what seems to be a weak lineup right now?
I think the stabilization of the rotation, the path there seems pretty clear. Verlander will go out and make his first minor league rehab start of this weekend, whether they decide 2 or 3 of those to build up so that in his first Astros start of the season, you're hoping he can give you maybe 75 pitches. And Framber Valdez getting on the beam. I mean, not like his Tuesday start against Toronto is a make or break situation, but given the way the second half of last season went in the postseason, then he goes out and walks everyone in his opening start this season, it bears watching. And for Framber's bank account, for generations of Valdez's, it bears watching 2 seasons away from free agency. But Verlander and Valdez are supposed to be 2 of the 3 heavy-duty guys. If Christian Javier gets back to form, not that you anticipate Javier throwing 8 innings very often, but as his third solid 6-inning guy. And that frees up more bullpen innings where you're going to expect to use more guys on a regular basis in support of Hunter Brown starts, JP France starts, Ronel Blanco, whoever else is spotting starts in the rotation. They need to diminish the number of middle relief innings that they throw, because if the back 3 doesn't turn out to be really good, well, then that's just going to be a season-long and a season-long of exasperation. You expect Abreu, Presley, Hader to generally pitch to the form chart, be an elite back end 3. But the Astros have had really good middle relief for the bulk of this dynasty era. They don't have that anymore. And so unless they're able to evolve it that way during the season, you need starting pitchers who regularly get you through 6 innings. And Verlander, Valdez, Javier are the 1, 2, 3 charged with that task.
Yeah, I think what I will enjoy the most having Verlander back is that true ace, that true number 1 guy where when you hand him the ball every 5th day, you got a good chance of winning that game. And right now with Framber, he's just so up and down. You don't know what you're going to get from start to start from Framber. But with Verlander, maybe he's not the guy throwing 98 miles an hour anymore and, getting through 8 innings with only 1 run, but he's still really good. And he's a guy that, if you're on a bit of a losing streak, you're happy to give the ball to Verlander. Like, all right, we're going to get this taken care of. We're going to be back on track today. Verlander's pitching. That's what I'm going to miss a lot. The thing with Framber for me is some of the numbers from his start were good as far as, he's getting ground balls again. He had a decline in that last season. He was getting some ground balls and some pitches were looking good, but it's just the wildness with him. The reason it concerns me so much is we know he can get kind of emotional out there. And when you get wild, it can have a snowball effect. But also Framber relies on a lot of guys chasing pitches out of the zone, chasing that curveball, diving into the dirt. And if you're so wild that you're not throwing many strikes, it's hard to get a big league hitter to start chasing pitches out of the zone when you so rarely throw it in the zone or starting at bat with a strike. That's the thing for me with Framber. He's got to get back to, let's paint that fastball in the outside corner at the knees, that sinker, get strike 1, and then let's get going. When he's behind the count and he's, begging the umpire for pitches that are a little off the plate, you're not going to get those calls when you're not consistently throwing strikes. So that's a big thing for me with him. With Javier and Hunter Brown, I'm actually kind of excited what the future could be. If they continue to kind of pitch like this, I know Hunter Brown only went 4 innings, but it's his first pass through, it's the first week of the season. Hopefully he can build on that. The future can look kind of nice because I don't know how much longer Verlander's going to be here. With Framber, is he going to continue to be this or are you going to go back to being good Framber? But if we're looking at it big picture, Christian Javier and Hunter Brown being solid starters for you, that's going to be a big deal for the Astros over the next, 2, 3, 4 seasons.
Also, we look at our minor league. There's not a lot of minor league prospects that you look at and go, oh man, like these are going to be the next big things. But Spencer Arrighetti looking good early. Loperfido has also continued his good hitting. So at least not early. He doesn't appear to be the next Justin Dearden. He's continued his hitting, and Dana Brown's talked about the possibility. What kind of reinforcements do you see guys like Loper? I mean, Loperfido is obviously not going to come and be your starting first baseman, but just providing you depth and another option there. Same with Spencer Arrighetti. He probably helps reinforce the bullpen. He's probably not going to help with your starters. But you talked about it. It's like you need as much help and as much consistent pitching as you can. How much of those guys can they be of a difference to this team?
On the pitching side, Arrighetti's the one who bears watching. If he has a good first month of the season, the question then is, well, who does he replace? Because you get Verlander back. I mean, Valdez would have to collapse completely for him to come out of the rotation. Javier is totally safe. Hunter Brown was in the rotation all of last season when he wasn't any good from May 1st on. So he's going to be better and be completely safe. So that leaves you France and Blanco. And again, that's 6 guys. So failing an injury, where does the opening occur for Arrighetti, even if he starts the season very well or continues to pitch well down at Sugarland? On the offensive side, Brandon, you said something that I'm sure for plenty of Astros fans, the counter would already be, why not Joey Loperfido as the regular first baseman? I mean, let the coffee percolate a little bit, but that he hit a homer in the Space Cowboys opener and chased that with 2 homers in the Space Cowboys second game. And how long did it take Jose Abreu to get to 3 home runs last season? And he swung the bat, again, just 1 series of games. Nevertheless, for a guy who was a crappy major leaguer in 2023, he swung the bat like a washed-up guy against the Yankees, late on virtually everything, waving at pitches for strikeouts as part of his 0 for 11. He's 37 years old. John Singleton is not remotely worthy of consideration if, maybe Bray at least need to make him a platoon guy as opposed to an everyday guy. If Loperfido mashes, he turns 25 next month. So this isn't some young phenom. But if he has 2-3 really good weeks at AAA and Abreu is still staggering around and John Singleton is John Singleton, why not on Loperfido? And, you look at the Astros schedule, they can get well in a hurry if they play well. But 3 with Toronto, then 4 up with the Rangers, where they'll get an up-close look at the Rangers World Series banner, and I'm sure the Rangers will have some fun memories to share with the Astros over the weekend. But then after a series with Kansas City, they play the Rangers again, and then they play the Braves. So if the Astros aren't careful, they could be off to an 8-12, 7-13 type start, in which case you don't give Abreu 3-4 months to round into form because the team is doing all right. And you can just drop him down in the batting order a little bit. Reminder, the Astros were 17-18 through 35 games last season. But that's not 7-13. If they get off to a start that really leaves them in the starting gate, and geez, you're in early May and you're 6-7 games out already. But Abreu was a bad player last year. If a month in, he's looking like a bad player this year, and you have no legitimate alternative at the major league level, because I think Dubon is a super utility guy, not a regular first baseman potential type player. If Loperfido's doing well, at that point, well, then why not give him an opportunity unless you're going to go out and sign Brandon Belt as he languishes as a free agent?
Yeah, I think that's why they traded for Cabbage before the season. They're trying to find options, guys that can play some first base, can play some outfield, and swing the stick from the left side. And, Cabbage didn't really work out. He had a bad spring. Loperfido's looking good, but, he's young. He's 24, but, he doesn't have any experience. We'll see if he can keep it going. I'm with Charlie, though. If he's still playing well and Abreu is not hitting, I don't see why not give him a shot. I wonder this, though. I did want to throw this out here. I feel like Dana Brown and Joe Espada are kind of, synced up. The Jake Myers stuff, they all kind of had the same thoughts on giving him a chance every day in center field. I wonder with Abreu, since that wasn't a Dana Brown signing, that wasn't his idea. If Jose Abreu is not working out at first base as the season continues, would he be quicker to make a change over there? Because that wasn't a move. That was a Dana Brown move. Espada was here last year. He saw how Abreu played. I wonder how long, how much rope does Abreu have? Is it 2 months? Is it a third of the season? I wonder just how long of him not playing well, if it continues, will they keep running him out there before they try some other options? I don't know.
Yeah, and Loperfido, he's on no one's top 100 prospect list, so no one should think that, hey, maybe they're keeping the next Jeff Bagwell in the minors. However, the Astros, last 2-3 years, their farm system ranked near the bottom, and rightfully so. Nevertheless, the Astros have rightfully bragged on this. Hey, for this farm system that's not in real good shape, every year they produce someone who's getting Rookie of the Year ballot votes. Well, who's the candidate for that on this roster this year? Answer, nobody. So if they're going to have something else to brag on, that look, our feeble little farm system cranked out another productive rookie who helped us go back to the playoffs. Joey Loperfido is candidate 1, and at this point in time, I'm not sure there is candidate 2. With Arrighetti not having a real pathway to the rotation, Pedro Leon, figure is going to crash the outfield party, whereas first base looks like a sinkhole in the Astros lineup. And hey, looky here, Joey Loperfido plays first base, among other positions, but that's a natural spot to give this year's Astros surprise rookie, if you want to call him that, if he gets here and performs, his opportunity.
Yeah, I'm not giving up hope on seeing Leon just because we need to see a full, like what Jake Myers brings. I know he had that, home run in game 1, but just given the entirety of his, body of work, I'm not sure that Leon wouldn't be an interesting add for depth. I'd rather see a Dubon play out there, but we're talking about Dubon possibly playing first, like we in the outfield. So like, there's only so many Dubons to go around. And, not to belabor the point, but the GM-less front office that made decisions in the absence of James Click and before Dana Brown, those decisions loom large right now. Charlie, if the answers aren't internal, then they can only be external. So Dana puts Dana Brown in a position. He has to make a decision on, should he go out and get something? What does he go get? And what does he leverage, considering you don't really have any prospects? So maybe it's like major league guys. And then also you have to be kind of realistic with yourself of where's your team at? And when do you think Dana Brown really starts getting serious about doing something, pulling the trigger on something where there's an external move, whether it's a trade or signing a guy off the free agent bin, like what you mentioned with Belt? When does he make that decision, and what does he leverage?
Yeah, I think we're a couple of months away from that kind of thing. On the pitching side, Verlander back, they're going to evaluate what they have pitching and then be thinking that July, August, Garcia and or McCullers. So they're going to be thinking that their roulette bets on the pitching wheel, that's going to be the home.
And Urquidy.
Throw Urquidy into the mix as well. Offensively, first base, the fuse is burning on Abreu. It's just how long is that fuse to where you get, hey, we have to detonate on this. In terms of a spare part type acquisition, the fact that the Astros do not have premium prospects, that they're going to be unable to swim in the deep end of the pool for whatever the best players who may go on the market June, July, that's okay. Because if you're looking for a platoon outfielder or a part-time first baseman, teams don't give up premium assets for those type of guys. So then you just have to weigh the price that you are going to have to pay, for player X, player Y. I guess a silver lining of having a thin farm system is the Astros have pretty much no one in the minors at this point you deem untouchable.
Yeah, I also think hopefully when Urquidy and Verlander come back, then all of a sudden, if you just insert them in your rotation, then what happens with Blanco? What happens with France? Or do those guys then become bullpen arms for you? So, maybe a lot of this could be stabilized just by a couple guys getting healthy and returning, and then you're not having to count on guys out of the bullpen that they just have so many question marks about, guys that haven't really done it before. If you have France in there, and, Blanco was really good out of the bullpen. So that's a role that he's been comfortable in. We'll see if they keep him stretched out as a starter. Who knows? But he'd be good in that role. So I think just getting Urquidy and Verlander back could be a big answer for the pitching side. I think on the hitting side too, moving Bregman to cleanup to have him, up at the plate with guys on base, it just hasn't worked out so far. He only has the one RBI in 4 games, and he's hitting cleanup for you. So that's something that's got to get fixed, because there has been a lot of traffic on the bases, maybe not as much as we would like, but I noticed Bregman's up quite a bit with guys on. It's not happening for him yet.
Hey, they had a 13-hit game in which they scored 4 runs. They had a 12-hit game in which they scored 3 runs against the Yankees. Timing isn't everything in life, but it damn sure counts. And if you're going to hit sub 200 with runners in scoring position, you're going to leave a lot of ducks on the pond and hurt your chances in close games. And obviously, 3 of the 4 losses against the Yankees were close. The Astros' record in 1-run games wasn't good in 2023, but record in 1-run games isn't indicative of excellence. It's just a variable stat year to year. The Orioles last year were awesome in 1-run games. This year, they probably won't be. The Astros core is still good. It's just not great anymore. It's a 1 through 26 major league roster. But I mean, does anyone think a week into the season, if the Astros somehow were to go into Arlington 0-7, they're not a contender this year? It's just silly, right? Sample size, point on the calendar, and the Jordans and the Tucks and the Bregmans. What is this? The Jordan movie that LeBron remade, Space Jam. Would the Monstars take their skills? I don't think so.
What's really going to be funny is when the Astros win the division, and then we look back at the start and just make fun of all of the panicking that happened. Yeah, that's the ticket. All right, it's going to be another episode of Stone Cold Stros in the books. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating if you're listening to us on podcast. Charlie, Josh, and I will catch you next week. You don't have to wait that long to get your Houston Sports Fix, because Josh and I will probably drop a bonus episode before the end of the week, so look out for that. And also possibility we drop maybe an bonus episode of Texans on Tap. Who knows when that's going to happen? We'll see. But again, make sure if you're not subscribed to the Sports Map Texans channel, go do that right now. We appreciate that as well. That's going to be it. Appreciate you listening to this. And as always, go Stros.